Hey guys, Iggy here. In today's video, I want to talk about all of the items present on the embark screen. I figured that it might be useful, especially for new players, to understand what every item on this list does, how can it be made, and if you should bring them or not. So let's get started. Okay, so starting with leather. So first of all leather is the same. This is not like RimWorld, where different types of leather have different properties. Porcupine leather and yak leather and wolf leather, they're all the same. Leather is made at a tanner from raw skins that you get from butchering animals at a butcher shop. They're quite easy to make. You just need to hunt or kill a creature and bring it to your butcher shop and slaughter it. Even you can slaughter a corpse that is not rotten. Or you can also slaughter tame animals. Your butcher will just bring the animal to the workshop and it'll slaughter the animal. You can make clothing from leather, like shoes and trousers and shirts. But also you can make leather armor, which is a weak type of armor, but it is armor nonetheless. It is also required in certain strange moods, so it's good to keep it around. I don't usually bring leather, since it's so easy to make. Even if a strange mood requires it, you can just slaughter. Maybe if you have an animal laying around, you can slaughter the animal to make some leather for the strange mood. So for cloth, we have three types. There's plant-based, which are like pigtail or hemp or rope reed cloth. We have silk-based cloth, like giant cave spider silk or cave spider silk. And we also have yarn-based cloth, like alpaca or sheep wool. So similarly to leather, cloth is used to make clothes and shoes, but you cannot make armor from cloth. And it is also required in certain strange moods. So if you fear that you won't be able to get different types of cloth through trading, you can bring maybe 3 pieces of each, just in case they have a strange mood. Because when a dwarf has a strange mood and they require cloth, they will require a specific type of cloth. So if they ask for silk but you only have plant or yarn, they won't accept it and they might fail the strange mood and go crazy. So you should only bring cloth if you are uncertain if you're going to be able to produce a couple of units of each type of cloth for strange moods. But even if you want to do a textile industry, don't bring cloth, just bring the materials necessary to make cloth. So either bring a yarn bearing animal or bring the seed of a fiber plant, like pigtail seeds, and then you can produce a lot of cloth that way. Also, cloth is used at hospitals to dress wounds, I believe, or to clean wounds. So once you have enough, it's good to keep some in your hospital, just so your doctors can treat dwarves with open wounds. Crafts are made from everything in the game pretty much. Stone and metal and bone and shell and wood and glass. And they are pretty much useless. There's no current use for them. I think maybe dwarves can wear crowns, but I don't think it gives them any advantage in battle. It just makes them look cool. But other than that, crafts are a trade good that you shouldn't be purchasing. You should definitely be producing them to sell them to traders so you can buy other things. But don't bring crafts on Embark. Wood. You get wood by chopping trees on the surface or the mushroom types of trees on the caverns. So you can make everything from furniture to crafts to training weapons with wood. But the special property of wood is that it is the only material that can be used to make beds outside of a strange mood. So you should bring wood if you're embarking somewhere that has no trees. But even if I'm embarking somewhere that has trees, I usually bring maybe 20, 25 units of wood. Just because I'm lazy, I don't want to cut down too many trees. I believe that animals, they get agitated when you chop down too many trees. So bringing wood with you might help mitigate that problem. Because you're going to chop less trees and you're going to agitate the animals less, I believe. So metal bars are made from smelting ore at a smelter. They are the most valuable and useful items in the game. So there are some types of weapons grade metals that can be used to make weapons and armor. Some of them being iron. Silver is used for making weapons, but I don't think armor. Copper is used for making weapons and armor. And some other types of metals. There's quite a bit. The metals that are not weapons grade, you can use them to make other things like components or crafts or furniture. gold being a classic example of really good furniture. So don't bring them at embark because they're quite expensive. And if you embark somewhere that has ore in the earth, you can just strike the earth and mine it from the earth for free. Metal bars are also required for strange moods, and it is actually one of the coolest mechanics in the game because, like I said, there are some types of metals that are weapons grade and some types of metals that are not weapons grade. Strange moods, they don't care about these rules, so you could get like a gold sword, which I don't think would make a very good sword, but I know that a platinum hammer would be a pretty good hammer, and platinum is not weapons grade. But yeah, they're useful for strange moods and crafting other things, but don't bring them. Just make them for free. Small cut gems and large cut gems. So you can use these gems to encrust the gems into objects. I think you can like encrust like a sword with gems to make like a cool sword, or like a crown, or like furniture. It increases the value of the object. But other than that, it has no real uses. So I've never seen anyone bring gems on embark or even like buy them from traders. They're required for strange moods, but outside of a strange mood and encrusting, they pretty much have no use other than being like a trade good. So stone blocks can be made from the stone boulders that you find on your embark. I believe that one boulder can be made into 4 blocks. Blocks are also lighter to carry than boulders. And I think they build things faster with blocks. So it's a way to, be efficient with the materials that you have. You can also make blocks out of wood. 1 wood log is turned into 4 wooden blocks. So if you're conserving material or trying to be efficient, this is the way to go. I usually bring like 3 or 4 blocks on embark just to build things faster, like the initial workshops. But you don't have to. They're kind of pricey, so you can just mine a couple boulders and then turn them into blocks. It's fine. So seeds are made from processing or consuming the plant that they're based on. So if a dwarf eats a plump helmet, they'll leave the seed on the table. If you cook the plant, it destroys the seeds. So you should try not to cook things that bear seeds. And they're useful for making farms. So plump helmet can be eaten raw. Pigtail cannot be eaten, but it can be brewed into booze or processed into thread to make textiles. Cave wheat can be milled into flour, or it can be brewed into beer. Sweet pods can be brewed into rum. They can also be ground at a millstone to make sugar, and then you can make syrup from that, which can be cooked. Rock nuts are the seeds of the quarry bush plant. So the plant also gives out leaves that cannot be eaten raw but can be cooked. And the rock nuts themselves can be pressed into oil at a screw press. Dimple cups can be milled into dimple dye. The game has 4 types of dye for textiles. Blue is dimple cup, red is hide root, green is bladeweed, and black is liver barb. Black being the coolest one, and is also quite rare because you can only find it on evil biomes. And yeah, if you want to make emo dwarves wearing all black, you gotta embark somewhere evil, and you gotta harvest the liver barbs and make black dye with them and make black clothing. Anvils are made out of either iron or steel at a metalsmith, and they're actually used to make the metalsmith workshop. Should you bring it? Yes, 100%. Always bring 1 anvil. If they're iron or steel, it doesn't matter. The material doesn't matter. So always bring iron because it's cheaper. So since you make anvils at a metalsmith and you need 1 anvil to make a metalsmith workshop, then without an anvil, it's not possible to make the metalsmith, and it's not possible to get a metal industry going. Which means that you have no metal industry. And you have to ask your liaison to bring an anvil for trading on the next year. So one time I left my anvil exposed on embark and I took too long to bring it inside, and I had like a bird just carry it away and just steal it, and I didn't have a metal industry for like a year because of that bird. So weapons, like I said before, they're made from weapons grade metals like iron or silver or copper or bronze or steel, and they are used for combat. Should you bring it? I usually bring 1 military dwarf on embark. So one of these guys, I make them into a soldier, and I give them an iron weapon if I can afford it. because iron is kind of expensive. It's like 100 points. Usually I'll give them like a short sword. But it's your choice. If you want to have another laborer, you can just not have a military dwarf, and then you don't need to bring a weapon, because you can just get your metal industry going and you can craft weapons from your metal industry. So training weapons are made out of wood. They deal no damage. They're used for like training and sparring. I never bring them, and I never make them, because I find it annoying for my military dwarves to have to like switch to training weapons when they're training, and then I assign them to fight someone and they have to change their real weapons. So they add a layer of complexity. Maybe they make them good at combat faster, but I just don't use them. Ammo is also made from weapons grade metals: iron, silver, copper, bronze, steel, and bismuth bronze. And they're used for crossbows, like hunters or marks dwarfs. I never bring boats, but that's just because I never use hunters. I think they're sort of buggy. And I rarely use marks dwarfs, at least at the start of the game. By the time I get a marks dwarf, I usually have a metal industry going, so I can just make boats. So trap components are used to build traps that your enemies step into and just get destroyed. You can put like a bunch of spikes and make like a fall trap where they fall on top of spikes. Or you can have like serrated iron discs that chop them into like 1 million pieces. I don't bring them because they are quite expensive, unless of course they are made out of wood, as you can see, but also it's pretty ineffective. It doesn't do much damage at all, so don't bring them. So picks are also made from weapons grade metals. So they're used for combat, like they can be like a weapon used in combat, and actually like a pretty good weapon, but they're also used for your miners to dig. They're really important. You should definitely bring them. So their materials only matter in combat. So like a steel pick would be better than a bronze pick in combat. But when it comes to mining, all of them mine just the same at the same speed. So of course, just bring copper picks. I usually bring 2, even if I have just 1 miner, because when I get migrants, I can turn some other guy into a miner and I don't need to forge another pick. Armor is made out of metal. The game considers like clothing to be armor as well. So clothing is just made out of fabric and textiles. Its uses are to prevent damage and also to not give them unhappy thoughts from being naked. I don't bring any clothes, but I do bring armor. So if I have a military dwarf, I give them a almost full set of copper armor, which is the kind of the worst type of armor, but it's good enough against the initial threats of the game, such as like wildlife or like small creatures. So I give them a mail shirt, a breastplate, a helm, gauntlets, low boots, greaves, a copper shield, and then, like I said, the weapon as well. I give them like an iron weapon, which is a little better. Other than that, I don't bring any clothes because they embark already like fully clothed. Toys, no one knows what they do. Maybe there's some science to be done here. I don't know if like a child dwarf playing with like a mini forge will secretly level up their smelter skill, or like if they're playing with a toy hammer, if they're gonna like be good at combat when they grow up. It's a mystery. I don't bother. So toys are pretty much useless. They can be made from metal or like wood or like pretty much anything. So instruments are actually one of my favorite mechanics in the game. They are procedural, so they are unique to your civilization of your world. So if you create another world and you play like as a dwarf, of course, your dwarven civilization on the other world is going to have different types of instruments. And they're procedural in the sense that maybe like you have a type of like, I don't know, this is like a gong or something, but like maybe you have like a stringed instrument where its body is made out of shell and the strings are made out of silk and the keys are made out of bone. Then you need like shell, silk, and bone to make this instrument, and you gotta craft the different parts. And they're used in taverns. So taverns, they need the instruments so that people can perform in those taverns and do cultural things. But they're also very expensive and very big to carry around. So basically, don't bring them. So drinks, dwarves have 4 types of booze: wine, ale, beer, and rum. And you should definitely bring them. I usually bring like 40 to 50 units of each type of drink. Please know that every 5 units of drink, they're gonna come in a new barrel, so a bunch of barrels with 5 units of drink each. I think barrels, they can carry more than that, but I think it is programmed like that so you can get a lot of barrels on Embark if you bring a lot of drink. So a good tip is like, instead of bringing like 20 drinks, bring like 21, because you get like 1 free barrel for just 1 extra unit of drink. Cheese is essentially food. I don't bring cheese. It's kind of expensive. You make it from milk, and the milk is made from milk-bearing animals like sheep or cows. Powders, I never bring powders. We have flour and sugar and dye and plaster and quicklime. Flour is made from grinding up cave wheat. Sugar is made from grinding up seed pods. Dimple dye is made from grinding up dimple cups. So gypsum plaster is processed at a kiln from the gypsum rock. And I think it's used for like casting broken bones or something. But I'm pretty sure you can use like a splint, which can be made out of wood. It's like a lot of work for something that can be easily done with just wood. So quicklime can be made at a kiln by processing any stones that contain calcium carbonate, those being limestone, marble, chalk, and calcite. And it is used to make milk of lime at an estuary to make parchment, paper, that can be used by scholars to write books or scrolls. So if you want to do like a library fortress, you can make like quicklime. But there's also other ways to make paper. You can make them from plant fibers, which is much easier. So basically don't bring powder. So for extracts, venom is pretty useless. I hope that one day in the future we can somehow apply venom to our weapons and to our boats. We can do that in adventure mode, in legacy, but not in fortress mode, unfortunately. And milk, like I said, is used to make cheese. Basically, you don't have to bring any of this. It's pretty much a waste of space. So for meat, you should definitely bring some meat. Any type of meat is okay. These are all edible. You can eat all of these. Just get the cheapest one and go with it. I usually, like I said in my previous video, I go with cow meat, but you can get like wolf spleen or something, which is kind of expensive, so don't. It's all food. It doesn't really matter. And of course, meat is made from butchering animals. So when you butcher like a coyote, you get all of this. Lungs and intestines and liver and tripe and brain and meat. So just butcher animals that you capture or tame, and you get all that meat. Just bring like 40 units of your preferred type of meat, and you'll be okay. You can also bring fish. I don't, because it requires like a fishery to process. So that's another workshop occupying like more space and another profession that needs to be used. So I just simplify things and bring meat. However, it's important to try to catch some fish, especially pond turtles, because you can then process them and they'll give you a shell as a byproduct other than just the meat. And shells are sometimes required on strange moods. And some instruments, they also can require shells. And they're kind of hard to find. So if you get your hands onto shells, just keep them somewhere safe and forbid them, and just keep them for when you need them in like a strange mood, because it might be difficult to like source a shell if someone is having a strange mood and you see that you have none. Fish is caught at ponds or rivers by fisher dwarves. They don't need any gear. So for plants, the only plant that we can bring is plump helmets. You should definitely bring like maybe 30 to 40 units of plump helmets, so it complements the meat that you're bringing. And also when your dwarfs, they eat the plump helmets or they brew them into drink, they'll give back the seeds that you can then plant again, so you can get your farms going. Garden vegetables, you can bring them. You could eat some of these to get their seeds. However, garden vegetables and many other plants in the game, they are above ground plants, which means they only grow above ground. With some workarounds that I can show in a future video. But the benefit is that these plants, they grow year round. So some of the dwarven plants, they grow like maybe 1 or 2 seasons a year. But these, they grow all year. So if you want to have like lots of different crops and different types of booze, you can bring these and have your dwarves eat them and get the seeds and get your farm started. But I usually don't bring them. These vegetables and more types of crops, the game has a lot of crops, way more than these. They can be harvested by herbalists. So you just assign crops to be harvested on the surface, and they'll go ahead and harvest them and bring them inside, and then you can process them or eat them for their seeds. So stone is the most plentiful material in the game, so there's not a lot of reason to bring it other than maybe this here, bituminous coal. So bituminous coal is a stone that is used for making fuel for smelters. You need 1 unit of fuel to smelt bituminous coal that generates 9 units of fuel. So if you want to get started with a smelting kind of process, you can bring like a couple units of bituminous coal, and then you bring like 1 unit of fuel, or you turn 1 wood into fuel at a wood burner, and then you get a lot of fuel from this. You can maybe bring some types of metal ore, like platinum nuggets, but they're also kind of expensive, so I wouldn't. But pretty much just mine what you need. Just make sure that your embark has what you need to mine, and then you don't need to bring any stone. Because also stone is pretty difficult to carry around, it's pretty heavy. Cages, similarly to other things in the game, the material that they're made out of, it doesn't matter mechanically. So don't bring cages, they're kind of expensive, and you can easily make them from wood. Bags, they are used for storing some types of grain or powder. So like you can store seeds inside bags. So instead of like 1 seed occupying 1 tile on a stockpile, you can have bags on that stockpile, and like 1 bag will have like 20, 30 seeds. So they're used for compressing the space better and being more efficient with storing. I don't usually use these mechanics when I can, because in the game we also have bins which do something similar. They can store multiple units of crafts or boats or metal bars. But I don't use them because while they're useful for compressing our stockpiles and like letting them store more things, they also remove the option of just at a glance, just seeing how much of the item you have just by looking. So like a 5x5 stockpile of seeds that's full, I know that it has 25 seeds. But if it has bags in there, you can have like 1 seed or like 50 seeds. I don't know. I gotta like click on the bag to check, or the bin. So I don't usually use these, but these are absolutely necessary for doing things like storing dye, because you can't just store powder like loose. It has to be inside a bag. The same for sand and other materials in the game. So like the game will literally not let you collect sand if you have no bags. So you'll need it for a few things, and the material doesn't matter as well, if they're made out of leather or yarn or plant or silk. Some people, they bring bags. I don't particularly use them. If you want to use them, you can bring some cheap bags, like maybe cave spider silk bags, or you can also just plant textile plants in your fortress and have like a textile industry, and you can make some bags for free. But it depends on your use. If you want to use bags, just bring like maybe a few. Threads, much like cloth, they are part of the textile industry. And much like cloth, they are made out of plant or silk or yarn. They're useful for stitching up wounds at hospitals. It's good to keep some around. And of course, they're useful for making cloth. In some strange moods, they also ask for thread. I don't particularly bring any type of thread, but as my fortress grows, I eventually ask traders to bring each type of thread, so I can have a few around just in case of a strange mood. Plant-based thread is processed at a farmer's workshop using a type of plant that is like a textile plant, like pigtail or hemp or rope reed or cotton. Silk thread is processed at a loom by a spinner. They have to collect silk from the caverns, and they'll bring it back to the loom and they'll turn it into silk thread. And yarn-based thread is processed at a farmer's workshop, again, by a dwarf with the spinning labor. They'll get like cut wool from like a sheep or some other yarn-producing animal, and they'll turn it into thread. Ropes are useful for making wells and also for restraining creatures. So you can like capture like a troll and just keep him like roped somewhere. Ropes, I don't think they can be broken by the creatures they're restraining. And also, the type of rope doesn't matter. You can keep a dragon roped to like a silk rope. It doesn't matter. Metal ropes are called chains in the game, and they work the same. And the ropes are made out of cloth at a clothier workshop, or out of metal at a metalsmith. Barrels are useful for storing food and drink. So you can keep like a bunch of prepared meals inside a barrel, or like a bunch of plump helmets or plants. Or like I said before, when you get drinks on embark, they automatically come in barrels. So I usually don't bring barrels because I already have the barrels that my drinks are stored in. So I think it's kind of useless to bring barrels. And they're made out of wood at a carpenter's workshop. Flasks are made out of metal and water skins are made out of leather. If I'm bringing a military dwarf, I'll bring them like a cheap 10-point leather water skin. So the metal ones are made at a metalsmith workshop and the leather ones are made at a leatherworks. And they're used for your military dwarfs so they can carry drinks into battle so they don't have to go back to your kitchen in the middle of a fray. So quivers are used by hunters or marks dwarves for keeping boats inside of them, and they can be made out of leather at a leatherworks. I don't usually bring them because, again, I don't use hunters or marks dwarves, at least not early on. Backpacks, they are used by military dwarves for bringing food into battle, similarly to flasks, just so they don't have to go back to your fortress to eat something. They can eat on the field, and they're made out of leather at a leatherworks. Sand is collected from the ground and is used in the glass-making industry for making glass. You can collect sand for free if you have any type of sandy tile in your map. Just set that as a sand collection zone and they'll collect infinite sand from that spot, actually. It never runs out. So glass, again, is made from the glass-making industry. So you can make green glass from sand. You can make clear glass from sand and pearl ash. And you can make crystal glass by combining rock crystals with pearl ash. But clear glass technically requires wood, so it's kind of annoying to make, but it's prettier than green glass. They are also required at certain strange moods, so it's good to have some around. I don't usually bring them at embark, I just buy them from traders once I am rich. Lye is used to make soap, I don't bring it. Charcoal is fuel made from coal, and coke is fuel made from bituminous coal. So again, if you're bringing bituminous coal to smelt, you need 1 unit of fuel to start the process. So bring either 1 unit of coke or charcoal just so you can smelt the bituminous coal into more fuel. So it kickstarts the process. Potash is made at an ashery and it's sort of like a fertilizer. I never used it. And pearl ash is the thing that you use to make crystal glass and clear glass. Buckets are used for wells, and they're also used for dwarves to carry water to either pond zones or to the hospital where they can give water to sick dwarves. It is made out of wood, so you can just either bring the wood and make it on site, or you can chop down the trees for free on site and make them on site. So splints are used for dwarves with broken limbs. I think they're similar to gypsum plaster, but they're also made out of wood. So again, don't bring them, just make them on site. Crutches are used by dwarves with broken legs, I believe. And they're also made out of wood at a carpenter's workshop, so just make them on site if you need them. Eggs can be used as food, but I don't usually bring eggs because I have other sources of food. So for tools, we have the different types of instrument parts, like some instruments in my world, they need bags or bellows or heads. I don't bring them, I just make them if I need. They're kind of expensive. And then other types of tools, you have nest boxes for egg-laying animals to lay eggs on, so they can either hatch into more animals or be collected by you. Jugs are used to store royal jelly and oil. Pots are made out of stone, and they're essentially the same as barrels. They can store food, except that they don't use wood to be made, so you can make them from very plentiful rocks. Hives are made for the beekeeping industry, so you make them out of rock or some other material, and you can, start producing honey. Scroll rollers are used for making scrolls, and book bindings are used for making books. Both are useful for scholars to write down whatever they want to write down. And so if you're going to have a library, you're going to need these, but you can also make them for really cheap materials, like think rock or like metal or something, or wood. So don't bring them. Bookcases are used for keeping books inside of them, and they can also be made for cheap, so don't bother. Pedestals and display cases, they can be used for displaying items, and they can also be made for cheap, don't bring them. Altars, I believe, are used in temples. They can also be made for cheap, so don't bring them. Dice, I have no idea what they do. I'm pretty sure it's nothing, and they can also be made for cheap, so don't bring them. Clay, similarly to sand, can be harvested infinitely if you have at least 1 tile of clay in your map. and it is used for making ceramics at a kiln. The embark screen, like on the map, it should tell you if you have clay or not. Sheet is used for making books, but it is also sort of cheap to make, so don't bring it. So cups, mugs, and goblets are used by your dwarves so they can drink with cups instead of drinking with their hands from the drink barrel, which will give them an unhappy thought. But also remember that this is not RimWorld. Their stresses and their needs are much less important in this game. Of course, they can still go kind of crazy or break things, but it's kind of rare to happen. I like to say, as an experienced player of this game, that if you give them any type of food, if you give them booze, and if you give them like bedrooms, and if you give them like nice things to look at, they'll be happy. Like, it's fine. So yeah, don't bring mugs, just maybe bring like 2 or 3, but that's like 30 points. So you can just like start mining and then make some mugs from rocks. That's fine. But yeah, I think that's all of the items. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you have any questions about the items, just leave them in the comments. And as usual, I'll do my best to reply. And I'll see you guys in the next video.